celebrity friends, Kim Kardashian, obviously my best friend. I definitely live a different lifestyle than other people.
Like,
What are you
seriously?
what are you talking about?
Shut up. Let me finish. You are the one person that I thought I
Listen to
trusted.
me.
Picture this: a grown man on a dating show, sitting across from a beautiful woman, and the only thing he can think about is how much she reminds him of his best friend. Not just any best friend, but Kim Kardashian. He literally admits on camera that dating this girl would feel like hooking up with his sister. Yeah, that's Jonathan Cheban, or as he desperately wants you to call him, Food God. This is the man who spent decades clinging to Kim's fame like a parasite, transforming himself from a somewhat successful PR guy into an unrecognizable, filler-filled mess who attacks strangers on social media. And after years of riding the Kardashian wave, it all came crashing down. The friendship that built his entire identity is basically over, and the receipts show exactly why Kim had to cut him loose. Let's go back to where this whole disaster really started showing its cracks. December 2013. Jonathan decided to apply for a reality show called Millionaire Matchmaker, and to get on, you had to submit an audition video. Now, most people would talk about themselves, their interests, what they're looking for in a partner, but not Jonathan. He spent the entire video bragging about being Kim Kardashian's best friend. The camera pans around his New York apartment, and he's going on about how it's worth $3.5 million. Then he casually drops that his net worth is probably around $5 million, give or take. He mentions his Bentley, his Florida apartment, and makes sure to tell everyone he doesn't fly commercial. The lifestyle he's describing sounds impressive until you realize none of it came from his own accomplishments. It all came from his association with one person. Then comes the really disturbing part. When asked about his celebrity crush, Jonathan doesn't hesitate. Kim Kardashian. He actually says he loves her butt and admits that because of her body, he completely changed the type of women he's attracted to. He used to like models, he says, but now he needs curvy girls. Models look too plain and stick-figured to him now. He can't even look at them anymore. This man literally rewired his entire sexual preference based on his best friend's body type. That's not normal behavior. That's obsession. And it gets worse because he then explains that he doesn't do permanent girlfriends because he needs to be able to jet off to Miami for a week without explaining himself to anyone. So basically, he wants a woman who looks exactly like Kim, but won't demand any actual commitment or attention from him. What a catch, right? This video alone should have been a massive red flag for Kim, but somehow, he stayed in her inner circle for years after this. The wild part is that Jonathan didn't just stumble into the Kardashian world by accident. He was born into serious wealth in New York City and grew up surrounded by famous people. He was childhood friends with Paris and Nikki Hilton, and he's admitted in interviews that he's known them since they were kids. This means he was already plugged into that elite socialite scene way before Kim became famous. Most people think he met Kim through Paris back in the early 2000s when Kim was still Paris's assistant and closet organizer. Jonathan saw an opportunity and latched on hard. He worked at various PR firms in the late 90s and mid-2000s. So he knew how to position himself. He knew how to make himself useful. And when Keeping Up with the Kardashians blew up, he made sure he was always around, always available, always ready to be on camera. But here's what most people don't know. Jonathan tried to launch his own reality show in 2010 called The Spin Crowd. It was supposed to follow him and his PR firm employees in New York. And guess who executive produced it? Kim Kardashian. But you won't find that credit on her IMDb page because the show was an absolute train wreck. There are clips floating around YouTube and they're hard to watch. In one scene, Jonathan is screaming at a young female employee named Erica because she showed up to work in casual clothes. He's standing there, surrounded by other employees, humiliating this girl in front of everyone. He tells her she looks like she's dressed for bed, that her outfit is disastrous, and that she's not ready for the big leagues of LA. Another employee tries to defend Erica, saying maybe she should get a lawyer, and Jonathan snaps back, asking why she doesn't get a stylist instead. The whole vibe is cruel and uncomfortable. One of his other employees even admits on camera that Jonathan is a complete nightmare to work for. But if you can survive the hell, the payoff is huge. That's the mentality. Abuse people, break them down, and maybe they'll come out successful on the other side. The show barely got any attention and quietly disappeared, but it showed exactly who Jonathan really was behind the scenes, and that toxic behavior didn't stay hidden for long. Social media gave everyone a front row seat to Jonathan's meltdowns. And oh boy, did he deliver. There are countless screenshots of him going off on random people online, and the pattern is always the same. He attacks their appearance, calls them poor, and reminds them that he's rich and they're nothing. In one Snapchat exchange, he tells someone, "Poor guy, you'll always be zero. You're literally a worker." The person fires back with a joke about Jonathan eating Kim's butt, and instead of laughing it off, he goes nuclear. He says his whole apartment is laughing at the guy, calls him trash, and mocks him for living with his mom. On Twitter, he's even worse. He tagged someone and wrote, "Get a life, you ugly, pathetic-looking piece of trash. You're the spit I walk on." Another tweet, he tells someone, "That's funny, peasant. I own 7 companies. come be my janitor. I have 50 employees and you own trash. But the most disturbing incident involved a woman on Instagram. It was her birthday, and she posted a photo of herself. Jonathan, for absolutely no reason, decided to leave a comment tearing her apart. He wrote, "Of course you wear glasses. Everything's a mess. Get some lips. Worst looking vegan alive. If that's vegan, give me beef." He kept going, calling out her chin, her wrinkles, and calling her fat. This is coming from a man whose face is so pumped full of fillers that he looks like someone took an aluminum can, crushed it, and said, "This is your new face." The hypocrisy is unreal. And this woman wasn't even a public figure. She was just a regular person posting a birthday photo. And Jonathan felt the need to destroy her confidence for no reason. When you look at all these incidents together, a clear picture forms. This man is deeply insecure, desperate to feel superior, and willing to hurt anyone to feel better about himself. Now let's talk about Larsa Pippen, because she's a huge part of why this friendship fell apart. Larsa used to be extremely close with the entire Kardashian family. There are old clips from the show where she's running around with Kim and Kourtney, pulling pranks, stealing people's clothes from the pool, and just being part of the crew. She was in the inner circle, trusted and included in everything. But in April 2020, something shifted. Kim and all her sisters unfollowed Larsa on Instagram at the same time. No explanation, no public drama, just a cold digital cutoff. Months later, Larsa finally spoke about it in an interview, and she blamed Kanye West. She said if Kanye felt like he and Kim were better off without her, then she'd accept that and move on. And honestly, knowing Kanye's history of controlling Kim's friendships, that theory makes sense. But here's where it connects to Jonathan. If Kanye convinced Kim that Larsa was bad energy and needed to be cut off, it's very likely he did the same thing with Jonathan. Kanye has always been about image, about cutting out anyone who doesn't elevate the brand. And Jonathan, with his cringeworthy food god persona and embarrassing public behavior, definitely wasn't helping the Kardashian image. So when Kim distanced herself from Larsa, Jonathan's close friendship with Larsa became a problem, guilt by association. And sure enough, around the same time Kim unfollowed Larsa, Jonathan started fading from Kim's social media too. In 2021, Larsa did an interview where she was asked directly if she felt betrayed by the Kardashians. She got emotional and said she never thought their friendship would end like that. She admitted things got ugly and weird, but she wouldn't go into detail because she didn't want to be petty. The interviewer, Jason Lee, kept pushing, asking if someone had told Larsa that Kim was talking behind her back. Larsa kind of confirmed it, but wouldn't name names. She said she heard hurtful things that Kim allegedly said, but she couldn't be sure if the person telling her was just stirring up drama. Jason pushed further, asking if Larsa had confronted Kim, and Larsa basically shut down, saying she didn't want to talk about other people's stories. Later, sources told E! News that the Kardashians didn't trust Larsa because they caught her talking behind their backs. Another source said Kim doesn't have any relationship with her and the whole family thinks Larsa is toxic energy. They accused her of trying to stay relevant by speaking out, and felt like she violated their privacy by sharing details publicly. Larsa also mentioned that she dated Tristan Thompson before Khloe did, but sources close to Khloe said that wasn't true. Larsa knew Tristan, but they were never together. The whole situation was messy, full of he said, she said, and clearly there was no going back. By 2022, Larsa was saying they'd all apologized to each other and were in a good place, living their best lives. She repeated that same line in multiple interviews, almost like she was trying to convince herself. But the reality is different. As recently as 2025, Larsa confirmed in interviews that she has zero interest in reconciling with Kim, and their friendship is done. She's moved on completely. And Jonathan, who stayed close with Larsa through all of this, became collateral damage. If Kim cut Larsa off and Jonathan kept hanging with her, that's a problem. That's choosing sides. And in the Kardashian world, if you're not with them, you're against them. Jonathan's desperation for fame took some truly bizarre turns over the years. In 2016, he entered the Celebrity Big Brother house in the UK. This was the same season that had New York, Tiffany Pollard, and Angie Bowie, David Bowie's ex-wife. While the show was filming, David Bowie passed away. It was a shocking, sad moment, and the energy in the house shifted. But instead of handling it with maturity, Jonathan made it all about himself. He claimed the house went from fun to dark and he couldn't deal with the negative vibes anymore. He said everyone was tired, there was no food, nobody knew what time it was, and the whole David Bowie situation made everything feel horrific. So after just 7 days, he quit. He left the show claiming he was claustrophobic and the experience stopped being fun. The way he talked about it in interviews made it sound like he was the victim, like the universe conspired to ruin his reality TV experience. Never mind that someone actually died. It was all about Jonathan's discomfort. Then there's the dating show incident that really shows how disturbing his obsession with Kim is. He goes on this show to meet a woman, and the second she walks in, he's already annoyed. She's a few minutes late, and he immediately snaps at her. "You're effing late. Where the F have you been?" He pre-ordered food for both of them without asking what she wanted, and when she seems surprised by how much food there is, he gets defensive. The whole vibe is controlling and aggressive. Then, out of nowhere, He comments on her body, saying, "Why big boobs for such a small body?" He tells her the boobs look good and seems proud of himself for the compliment, like she should be grateful. The woman asks why he picked her, if it was because of her looks, and Jonathan admits it was partly because of her resemblance to Kim Kardashian. He says he was drawn to the similarity. The woman, clearly uncomfortable now, points out how weird that is, and Jonathan agrees, saying it would be like hooking up with his sister. But he doesn't stop there. He still tries to pursue her, asking if they're definitely having a date later, and she shuts him down. The whole thing is painful to watch. This man cannot separate his identity from Kim Kardashian. Every woman he's attracted to has to look like her. Every conversation somehow circles back to her. It's not friendship at that point. It's an unhealthy fixation. And speaking of unhealthy, let's talk about the lawsuit that proved just how far Jonathan has fallen. In 2023, he sued a Korean BBQ sauce company for $20 million. Yes, you read that right, $20 million. His claim? A glass bottle of their sauce allegedly exploded in his hand back in 2020, causing serious injury. He argued that this incident destroyed his beautiful hands and negatively impacted his social media career, because apparently Jonathan's hands are worth $20 million. The internet had an absolute field day with this lawsuit. People roasted him mercilessly, pointing out how absurd and desperate the whole thing was. This is a man who's supposedly worth millions, who brags constantly about his wealth and his companies, and yet he's suing a small BBQ sauce brand for an accident that happened years ago. It screams desperation. It screams someone who's running out of money and relevance and is willing to do anything to get back in the headlines. By December 2023, the cracks in his friendship with Kim were impossible to ignore. They were spotted together one last time at the grand opening of the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas. Photos show them smiling, posing together, doing what they've always done. But after that night, nothing. No more public appearances. No more photos together. No more comments on each other's posts. Fans started noticing and questioning what was going on. Then in March 2024, Jonathan finally broke his silence. In an interview, he admitted that he and Kim still text occasionally, but he made it very clear they don't talk about anything meaningful. He said he never discusses her dating life or her business with her. Think about that for a second. If you're supposedly best friends with someone, wouldn't you talk about the most important things in their life? Your relationships, your career, your struggles? But Jonathan admitted he doesn't do any of that with Kim. So what do they even talk about? The weather? It's obvious their friendship has become surface level at best, just enough contact to avoid an obvious public falling out. He also mentioned in that interview that people constantly ask him to set them up with Kim, and he refuses. He acts like he's being noble, like he's protecting her privacy. But really, it just highlights how transactional his relationship with her has always been. People only want to know Jonathan because of his access to Kim, and now that access is basically gone. A TikToker did a deep dive on their friendship in 2024, pointing out all the signs of a falling out. She noted that Kim posted a belated happy birthday to Jonathan on her Instagram story, and he reposted it. But that was the extent of their interaction. The TikToker theorized that Jonathan has always been a backup friend for Kim, someone she'd call when she was bored or lonely, but never a true priority. She also speculated that Jonathan probably has a good relationship with the media and may have leaked information about the family over the years, which would explain why they're keeping him at arm's length now. There's even a scene from Keeping Up with the Kardashians that hints at deeper issues. Kim confronts Jonathan about rumors that he's planning to write a tell-all book. She's visibly upset, saying he's the one person she thought she could trust. Jonathan tries to defend himself, acting shocked that she'd even think he'd do something like that. But Kim isn't buying it. She accuses him of using her like everyone else does and storms off. The scene cuts before we get a resolution. But the fact that it was even a conversation says a lot. Kim clearly doesn't fully trust him, and she has good reason not to. Jonathan has built his entire public persona on being her best friend. If that friendship ends, what does he have left? That's where the real fear comes in. Because if Jonathan decided to spill secrets, write a book, or do interviews about his years with the Kardashians, it could be massively damaging. The only thing stopping him is likely a very tight, very expensive NDA. On Reddit a few years ago, fans started discussing how strange Jonathan's presence on the show always was. One user wrote that every other episode used to mention, "My best friend Jonathan," and they never understood why he was featured so much. Another person commented that Simon Huck, another former friend of the family, spilled on a podcast that Jonathan was huge in PR at one point, and was definitely chasing fame and the spotlight. The consensus was that Jonathan has always been fame-hungry, and his whole food god transformation is just embarrassing at this point. He's desperately trying to stay relevant, creating a brand that nobody asked for and nobody takes seriously. The reality is that Kim has a pattern of cutting people off when they no longer serve her, or when they embarrass the family brand. She did it with Larsa. She's distanced herself from other former friends over the years, and now she's doing it with Jonathan. He's become a liability. His aggressive social media behavior, his cringeworthy attempts to stay famous, his obsession with looking young, and his extreme cosmetic procedures, all of it reflects poorly on the Kardashian image. They've spent years carefully curating their brand, and Jonathan's chaotic energy doesn't fit anymore. There's also his connection to Scott Disick, Kourtney's ex, who has also been somewhat pushed out of the inner circle in recent years. Jonathan admitted in an interview that he hasn't heard from Scott in a long time, which suggests he's been cut off from multiple people in the family's orbit. When you're on the outside looking in, that's when you realize how conditional those relationships always were. Jonathan was useful when Kim needed a fun, loyal friend for the show. He was entertaining, always available, and willing to play whatever role they needed him to. But now that Kim is older, focused on her kids, her law career, and her businesses, she doesn't need that anymore. And Jonathan, clinging desperately to a friendship that no longer exists, is left trying to convince the world that everything is fine. In January 2025, things got even messier. Media personality Jason Lee, who's known for exposing celebrity tea, called Jonathan out for secretly befriending him while still pretending to be loyal to the Kardashians publicly. Jason suggested that Jonathan was playing both sides, trying to stay in Kim's good graces while also maintaining relationships with people the family had cut off. It's a dangerous game, and it's one Jonathan is clearly losing. The truth is, Jonathan Cheban was never really Kim Kardashian's best friend in the way he wanted people to believe. He was a convenient accessory, someone who made her laugh, someone who was always available for last-minute trips and appearances. But when it came down to it, he was option C or D, not A or B. He was the friend you call when your real friends are busy. And now that Kim has evolved past needing that kind of relationship, Jonathan is left scrambling to hold on to whatever scraps of relevance he can find. His entire identity was built on someone else's fame, and that's a dangerous foundation. When you're only known for who you know, what happens when that person doesn't want to know you anymore? You're left with nothing but a nickname nobody takes seriously, a face full of fillers, and a reputation for being cruel to strangers on the internet. Jonathan thought he could ride the Kardashian wave forever, but waves eventually crash. And when they do, they leave you stranded on the shore, wondering how you got there. So where does that leave us? Kim Kardashian has clearly moved on. She's surrounded by new friends, focused on her family and her empire. Jonathan, on the other hand, is still desperately trying to convince people he's relevant, that he's successful, that he's more than just Kim's former sidekick. But the evidence tells a different story. The last real public interaction they had was over a year ago. They don't talk about anything meaningful anymore, and all signs point to a friendship that's functionally over, held together only by the thinnest thread of politeness and probably a very legally binding NDA. The lesson here is pretty clear. When you build your entire life around someone else, when you let their fame define you, you're always one argument away from irrelevancy. Jonathan had opportunities to create his own path, his own brand, his own success. But instead, he chose to be known as Kim Kardashian's best friend. And now that title doesn't mean what it used to. He's a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake proximity to fame for actual accomplishment. Because at the end of the day, when the cameras stop rolling and the friendship fades, you're left with nothing but your own choices. And Jonathan's choices led him here, to a place where he's more known for his meltdowns and lawsuits than anything he's actually achieved. The real question now is what happens next. Does Jonathan finally let go and try to build something real on his own? Or does he keep clinging to the past, desperately name-dropping Kim in interviews and pretending they're still close? Based on everything we've seen, it's probably the latter, because admitting the friendship is over would mean admitting he's lost the one thing that made him special. And for someone as insecure and fame-obsessed as Jonathan Cheban, that's a reality he's not ready to face. So he'll keep posting, keep suing BBQ companies, keep attacking strangers online, and keep pretending he's still the food god. But everyone else will know the truth. The reign is over, the friendship is done, and all that's left is a man who built his house on someone else's foundation and watched it crumble the second they walked away.